Hi, welcome to Live and Local, a talk show discussing the events, people, and organizations that affect the Iowa City area. I'm your host, Brian McConnell. With us today is Kristie Fortmann-Doser, the Executive Director, and Missie Forbes, the Development Director of the Domestic Violence Intervention Program. So, welcome both of you.
Thank you.
So this is one that's somewhat special to me too, just because after some experiences with some exposure from Kristie and other things, I know both of you, but I decided to get involved in the board of directors, and it started with the community leadership program, where just found out a little bit more about it, and it was just kind of touching. And then you actually spoke at our agency at A.W. Welton Briscoe, and just hearing some of the stories really again moving, and then also the 100+ men who care. When Brad spoke about his experience, it was just like, you know what, I've got a couple of free hours a month, and this is something that I'd like to kind of get involved in too. But so Kristie, as the executive director, and I know you've been involved with it for quite a while.
I have.
Not to date you at all, but
Thank you.
Do you want to just give a brief overview of what DVIP is?
Absolutely. I think that it's important to start with an understanding that domestic violence is something that we know has been around for a very long time, but it really wasn't until the middle 70s that our communities started responding and saying, something's going on here, we need to make a community response. And in 1977 was actually the Women's Resource and Action Center on the University of Iowa campus that got a CETA grant to evaluate and do a needs assessment for a hotline in the Johnson County area for domestic violence victims. And what they found was, as soon as they opened their doors and let people know that there was support and information, they started coming. And so the Crisis Center of Johnson County at that time opened up a crisis line for the Domestic Violence Intervention Program in 1977. And then in 1979, the program was incorporated and got its first shelter in 1980. And so we've been around a little while. In the past, many, many years, we've served in our shelter more than 7,000 individuals and more than 23,000 individuals in our larger program area. So,
wow.
Yeah.
I want to touch on this at the beginning and at the end, because it's something very exciting that I think it's our 18th annual, not to steal your thunder, Missy, but if you just want to talk a little bit about the Super Bowl that's coming up here very soon.
Right, so as you said, it's the 18th annual DVIP Super Bowl, and it's an annual community event that people come out for. The ticket price, you get a bowl to take home and all the soup you care to eat. And we have, we're excited this year, we have Kevin B.F. Burt as our musical entertainment. And we are expecting a great crowd, and we're very excited to kick it off. We've moved it up a little bit earlier this year than it has been in years past. It'll be in February, soup season, we like to call that. So we're very excited, and we're excited to see the community come out in force.
So talk about a little bit of how it works. I know it's unique. It's not a normal just kind of soup supper. So.
Nope, it's not. We are lucky enough to have 33, I believe, area restaurants donate their soup in 5-gallon quantities, and then we'll have bread there also. And we get the buckets, drop them off at the restaurants, and then pick them up, and it'll be at the Clarion Hotel on North Dodge this year again. And they heat up all the soups that day, and at 5:30 people come in for $25. You get a per ticket, and then you get your bowl. You can eat out of your bowl, or you can have a different bowl and save your bowl. And then you can sample all the different soups. We have vegetarian soups, meaty soups, cream soups. We do take, dietary restrictions into consideration as well. So, and everything, will be kind of separated and
all the
clearly
ingredients are listed.
Marked.
Right?
Yes, yeah.
So what's unique about the bowls? They're not just...
What is unique about the bowls is that we are lucky enough to partner with Fired Up. They do a donation of bowls that people can go in and decorate the bowls, and Fired Up will donate those to us. So we get bowls from them. We have our board members and other people donate bowls to us that we save specifically for the Super Bowl. And then also this year, Renee's Ceramic Cafe, for a $7 bowl price, you can decorate a bowl, and then she will donate those to us as well.
If people happen to have some eclectic awkward, weird, fun bowls, which seem to be the most popular every year.
Yes,
Right.
Is there a place that they can bring those beforehand just to, as a donation to have those
Yeah,
involved?
that would be great. Our office building, our administrative offices are at the 1105 project at 1105 South Gilbert Court, and we would definitely take those unique bowl donations.
And
there
I was
as
told
well.
the weirder the better.
The weirder the
whether
better.
There's deer antlers
Yeah.
or
Yes.
maybe a failed art project from your child. Of course, not failed, but maybe
No,
one that they wanted
no, not
to.
failed.
Yeah, maybe they've outgrown their
We've had some
attachment
interesting,
to.
even dog bowls. It just really
Christmas gifts from grandma that you
really
don't want
broad
to.
range.
You can tell her that went to a good cause.
And you hope she's not there to pick
Yes.
that
Right,
one
yeah,
out,
yes.
recognize it.
Right.
Wonderful.
We actually have some members who have been to it over the years who'll bring back bowls from 10 years ago because their collection's gotten so big that they can't store it all.
Yeah,
Over 18 years, we've had a few people who have managed to get a few bowls. So
that's neat. And we're going to touch on this again because it is coming up. It's one of DVIP's bigger
Yes.
fundraisers, so we really want to touch on that. But to get back to the actual service, one of the things when you came and spoke to us at our agency was how it's unique, how the victims of domestic violence are affected compared to when you just think of normal crime that you might hear come across the blotter. Could you
Right.
speak about that? And
Well, I think when I go out in the community and I talk about domestic violence, and you remember this conversation, I think one of the most important things for people to understand is that batterers as a whole have a completely different range of access than most criminals. So, the question I always ask is, think about the one person that knows you better than anybody else. They know your strengths, they know your weaknesses, they know who you love more than your own life. They know where you live, they have access to where you live, they have access to your car, they have access to your money, they have access to your children, and they know the things that you're proud of, the things you aren't so proud of. Batterers as a whole know all of the things that give them leverage, give them access and capacity in a way that most criminals don't have. And I think that's the piece that we sometimes forget about domestic violence. So many times you hear that question, why does she stay? And what we don't always hear is that batterers on average stalk their intimate partners for 21 months after they leave. Victims leave all the time. Leaving and being able to stay gone permanently is incredibly difficult based on the knowledge, access, leverage that batterers have and what they're willing to do to get control back. And so for us, it's really about helping people understand the consequences of those behaviors and the nature of them.
And that's one thing I remember when we sat down for orientation that I admitted that I was guilty of, is that naive feeling of just saying, well, why didn't they leave?
Right.
And that's really one of the biggest things that you want to get out, because that's
Yeah.
almost putting the victim as at fault.
Right. And it absolutely makes them responsible for ending the crime. If we make the assumption that leaving is what solves the problem, I'd be on that bandwagon right now. But what I know is that batterers don't give up at that point. That's actually when they tend to escalate. We know that victims are 72 times more likely to be killed in the 2 weeks after they leave than at any point during the relationship. And so when a victim is thinking about leaving, okay, you're going to hear me use the language of victim survivor kind of interchangeably. I say the word victim because somebody's doing something to them, and it is traumatic and violent. And so when victims are considering leaving, they do it in a very, very thoughtful way. They're thinking about their safety, they're thinking about their children's safety, they're thinking about what resources they have access to, and where is the support network. If they access that support network, are they putting other people in danger? And so they're very creative and resourceful, but more importantly, they're very thoughtful about how they're going to leave. I think that if I always encourage people, it's kind of a weird thing to do, but I encourage people to take a look at the Attorney General's website. The Iowa Attorney General has a program called Crime Victims Assistance Division, and they track homicides related to domestic violence in Iowa. They've been doing that since 1995. And if you look at the document over and over and over again, what you see is this person just left. They just filed for divorce. They just got a protective order. They were having their first visitation. over and over again. And so, leaving is the riskiest thing a victim does. I will repeat that a million times. And as a community, having the expectation that leaving solves a problem really misses the bigger picture of the question, why is this person battering?
Right.
And why do they think they can get away with it?
Right. I remember one thing that you touched on that always stuck out to me too. Everybody goes to work and they think about the normal problems they have at work. And even if you love your job, as I do, there's stresses that go with that. And then imagine that there's somebody maybe calling your boss or
Yes.
Explain sometimes how that can work too. And
Absolutely, because for batterers, they know that the quickest way to cut their partner off at the knee, essentially, is to cut them off from resources. And employment is a huge resource. What we know about victims of domestic violence is that 75% of them have identified losing a job because of the actions of their partner. And that's a significant number. When you look at the employment environment, that costs employers large amounts of money. I mean, I think that the last statistic I saw was something like $50 billion in lost productivity, benefits, and just cost to the business world. And I think that for us to really look at what are the places that a batterer can have the fastest impact, calling in somebody and harassing them at their workplace, showing up at the workplace, stalking them outside of the workplace is huge. There's no question.
And as much as the employer may try to be sensitive, it's a distraction.
It is. It is completely a distraction. We've worked with a wide range of employers in our service area just around safety needs. Because one of the things that happens is a victim survivor may get a protective order either on their own or through criminal proceedings that might be against their intimate partner. And so we'll work with that employer on how do we keep that person the most safe and look at the liability issues that an employer has when they have knowledge that there is somebody who is violent who is targeting one of their employees. So.
Yeah. Missie, some of the things that in your role there, what are some of the other things that are going on? I know that Maria's Voice was just finished up. What are some other things that you're actively involved in? I know right now we're big on Super Bowl.
We are big on Super Bowl. A year and a half ago, our service area changed, and we grew. We doubled in size, and so we do have some counties in the south. As a development director, my job is to raise funds, one of the pieces of the puzzle for me, and so we are going to start working in those communities and reach out to volunteers and churches and other support groups there, support
Sure.
there that we could partner with in one capacity or another. In the fall, in Iowa City, we partner with Hy-Vee to do a shop for shelter, and that's wildly successful. We just have groups of volunteers stand at the doors of Hy-Vee, the area Hy-Vees, and hand out shopping lists of needs that our shelter has, and that was greatly successful this year in our southern counties, which include Burlington, Keokuk, and Mount Pleasant. I believe in Burlington. And you'll have to remind me what other city we did that in.
In Fort Madison.
In Fort
as well,
Madison.
and Mount Pleasant.
And
yes.
Mount Pleasant. We did a shop for safety. And so the same thing, we partnered with those area Hy-Vees, and people in those communities were able to donate to specific needs in those our offices down there have. So that is another thing that we do, just trying to get the word out to other community groups about our needs. It's not, it is always financial, but we do have physical needs that we need as well. We in preparing for the Super Bowl, I'm hearing a lot of this is the amount of food that we go through in a week, or the amount of diapers, or things like that. I mean, you can imagine a family of 4 goes through with a baby maybe a pack of diapers a day. Our shelter goes through triple, quadruple. Right?
Yeah.
It's infinite amounts, larger than that. And we have clients that aren't in shelter that maybe have needs too that we supply. So it's a lot of that, a lot of engaging the community. Last week I went to a Church Women United meeting. They'd like to partner with us and help us out with shelter needs and things like that. So that's a lot of what we have going on right after the Super Bowl and things like that. But
Sure.
My job is to figure out how we can just create an environment where everybody knows that they're helping the domestic violence intervention program, but then also the community at large can partner with us as well.
So along those same lines, what are some of the immediate needs that the shelter has, or also maybe it's a good time to talk about volunteer opportunities and we understand that there's a challenge in that, just with the very heightened confidentiality and other things when it comes to volunteering. But I guess what are some of the immediate needs, and how could somebody get involved?
Oh, do you have any? I've got plenty.
Well,
If you
right.
yeah.
One of the new kind of higher elevated needs right now is pajama sets for women. We are looking at different ways to, when they come into the shelter, when they meet us, and what we can give them maybe as a token of, here's a little bit of comfort. So that's kind of one of the things that we are working on. And then, that is, I think, one of the heightened needs that we've come up with. But we're always in need of blankets, pillows, pillowcases, sheet sets, because it's not just for towels, right? For DVIP, it's not just about shelter. We have a very large outreach. So even if we have a client, shelter is not necessarily for everybody, or everyone doesn't need shelter. So I think it's important to remember that we have, all of our clients have some sort of needs. So it's not all shelter-based needs. It's client-based needs.
It's also, and before you get into, which I know that you have a laundry list
Right.
of things for sure.
Yes.
Just one of the things that you don't always think about, whether it's ibuprofen or deodorant. I just thought of the funny time when you let us know that we needed that, so I sent something out to our company-wide. I came back from lunch and had about 75 deodorants decorated my office, which
It was
which
wonderful.
is funny, but it's just those little things you don't think about, like deodorant and things like that that we take for granted. That's just there unless you're out, then you go get it. But go ahead and talk some more about some of the volunteer opportunities, some of the needs.
Well, we have this kind of running joke that if you need it in your house, we need it in ours times 10. So, and things that people don't think about, because there are things that we use on our daily basis that we kind of take for granted because we only need a set of dishes, or we only need a set of silverware. For us, that's an ongoing need, because when individuals leave our shelter, it's common for us to give them supplies as they're moving into a location. And so we go through silverware and cups and towels and hygiene products and toilet paper, like water, quite literally.
Yeah.
And so for us, it's just really those most basic needs that we're constantly trying to fill. Volunteers are, trying to move into that and speaking a little bit about that. Volunteers are a huge, huge part of our agency. If there's somebody paid doing it at DVIP, there's somebody unpaid doing it as well. And volunteers last year supplied more than 4,000 hours of support to our organization. At just the Super Bowl alone, we'll have more than 100 volunteers just at that one event. And we actually get requests to volunteer more than we actually have jobs for volunteers. That's how amazing the support is in this community. And so for us, volunteers can do a little bit of everything. We certainly have the very skilled, trained perspective of the work that we do, providing crisis intervention support, answering our 24-hour hotline, going to court with a victim, offering support group facilitation. Those are skilled positions where individuals who have either got those skills in terms of working in the community or go through our training. As in Iowa, we have requirements around certification and victim counselor training that volunteers and paid staff all have to go through. So for somebody who's interested in doing that kind of support, we have a resource to prep them and prepare them to do that. We also, though, have a whole group of volunteers that help us with just the daily management of doing this work. Everything from taking brochures out into the community and making sure they're in all the places where victims might have immediate access, to helping kids get to school, to playing with kids and reading books to them, and helping with filing and cleaning. Oh, our volunteers who clean, we love them. We absolutely adore them.
There's a special place for them.
There is a special place for them, and somebody's looking over them. Let me just say that. But we're going to be coming up on spring soon, and we're going to need a couple groups to do landscaping work out at the shelter, and so there's a whole range of activities that people can do, and really, if you have a particular skill, we're also interested in that. If it's something along the lines of finance, if it's in the lines of legal services, we're always looking for professional support in the community on our board of directors. That type of guidance and resource really helps our organization move forward and maintain our mission in a very positive way.
Yeah,
So.
that's great. So it's changed a lot in the last couple of years,
Yes.
just with, for one, your territory. Talk about the
Yes.
challenges with that relative to funding and how you've had to get creative, and we know that you do a great job at that, but just kind of
thank you.
talk about that a little bit.
Well, about 2 years ago, the Iowa Attorney General's office announced that they were at a point where they were no longer going to be able to supplement the funding that the state had been providing from their reserve funds, that they had hit the point that it wasn't sustainable any longer. And we were also looking at federal cuts. Something people may not be aware of is that over the last 15 years, we've actually lost almost 30% of victim services in Iowa. And that was between the years of about 2000 and about 2012. And so the Attorney General's office basically said, we have to restructure, we have to come at this from a different perspective in terms of how we're supporting victims. And they also challenged the legislature to dig a little deeper and support the funding that victim services needed to provide that crisis service, because we're looking at a service that responds to immediate danger. And so what ended up happening was the Attorney General's office restructured how they fund and went to a 6-region state. We are part of Region 6. And when they made the decision to do that, it included funding 1 to 2 shelters per region, and 1 to 2 domestic abuse comprehensive services per region, and 1 to 2 sexual assault programs per region. So we're at a point right now where the Attorney General's office is funding about 20 programs in the state of Iowa to provide victim services. For us, previously we served Johnson, Iowa, Cedar, and Washington counties, and we now also include Des Moines, Henry, Van Buren, and Lee counties. So we go all the way south to the Iowa border. And for us, we were absolutely committed and worked very, very hard to engage those communities and to make sure that the services that were being provided by people from the community. That was really, really critical to us. So many times you see a larger organization come in and kind of take over in an area and don't always know the area. And so for us, it was really, really important that we came in and learned from the community and said, we're not here to bring our people in, we're here to engage yours and make sure that we're supporting community members doing this community work. And I will say that doubling our service area was a challenge. It included increasing the size of our staff pretty significantly. And it was also happening at a time when we were expanding our organization locally with the 1105 project. At that time, we were also in the process of doing a $1.25 million capital campaign with the 4 agencies involved with the 1105 project, which included the Crisis Center, the Domestic Violence Intervention Program, NAMI, the National Alliance of Mental Health in in Johnson County, and the Free Lunch Program. And so we were in the process of moving everything from being in the shelter, which was kind of busting at the seams, to including not only the new administrative and outreach offices through the 1105 project, but also satellite offices in Burlington, in Keokuk, and then also in Mount Pleasant. So it's been an expansive year, and I will say as an executive director, I really relied heavily on our board of directors and their expertise in how you have that kind of expansion without losing the integrity of your mission and without losing the integrity of your philosophy. So.
Yeah, that's a lot of moving parts.
It was.
So, on the heels of the actual NFL Super Bowl, and of course everybody has heard about all of the issues that have come about from domestic violence through the NFL and other sports. Obviously, all very horrible things, but has there been a positive to that as far as awareness that you've seen?
I would say there has been. I think that I've been doing this work for quite a while. I actually started out as a volunteer in this field back in 1985 with the Rape Victim Advocacy Program here in the community when I was a college student. And what I know from that time period and the ensuing years was just that question of why did she stay? What did she do? Where was she at? Has such an impact.
Mm-hmm.
And this last 6 months, when the Ray Rice video came to light,
Mm-hmm.
I will say that one of the most amazing things to me was that people were really aware of the consequences of asking the questions about his intimate partner and really challenged themselves not only to not do that, but to name it when it was happening. And that's a significant change in the social construct, that people were very, very clear that the behaviors were what caused the problem, and they were very, very clear about it being unacceptable. And I was impressed and taken a little by surprise at that shift being so visible on such a national level, that people were saying we don't need to ask where she was at and what she was doing, and that was a good moment. That was a very good moment.
It's good that something positive can come out of something so negative.
And I think too, it's more in the conversation. It's not something we don't talk about. It is actually now something that we do talk about.
Yes.
And people are getting to a point where it is not a comfortable conversation, but it is a conversation.
Including Super Bowl ads.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
So some other things. I know that you've talked about, and there's a pet fund and other things like that.
Yes.
So just being a dog owner or whatever. But you also talk about, and that's another thing that I think that people don't think about when these things happen, is what happens to the pets. And
Yes.
it's hard to leave a pet, which makes it hard to leave the situation. Could either of you talk about that a little more too?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that so many times people aren't aware of how pets are affected by domestic violence. And for many victims, leaving a relationship where domestic violence is happening, if there's a pet or if there's livestock like on a farm, that many victims won't leave the pet behind for fear that they'll be injured or harmed. Every year we do a campaign called our Cats Rule, Dogs Drool campaign.
And I changed it.
She changed it, which was fine. But it's a campaign for us to have funds set aside specifically for services for pets. So in addition to having the funds to help pay for medical expenses related to injuries, to food or emergency supplies, and for kenneling, we also have a group of volunteers that foster pets. When we have somebody who is unwilling or unable to leave a pet behind, we have a group of volunteers that assist. The Johnson County Animal Shelter is a tremendous partner in this process, as is Safe Haven out of Iowa County and some other resources in our area. We have a whole group of volunteers in Cedar County that assist us with this. And we really couldn't help victims move forward without having resources like this, because it really does set a tone for a victim survivor, because that's a family member for them. They wouldn't leave them any more than they would leave their child. So, yeah.
Other than funding and maybe continued awareness, which is, I think going in the right direction, but what are some of the other challenges that you face on a day-to-day basis, either of you? I know that's a pretty...
Not having enough money.
Yeah.
Or
Money,
having enough funds to keep our doors open.
Yeah.
So this issue has been around for a long enough time. We just need to make sure that we have enough money to keep the doors open wherever they may be.
How did you both get involved? I know that you said that you started volunteering with RVAP in college. What kind of drew you to that? And then after that, Missy, if you could kind of say the same.
Well, for myself, like many of the women of the 70s and 80s, I was a survivor of sexual violence. And in reaching out for support and services, I connected with an organization out in Ames that, one, they were incredible in terms of the resources and support they provided, but they really approached it from a very different perspective than many human service agencies do. And they approach it from a perspective of, this is a person who's a victim of violent crime. There wasn't anything wrong with them to begin with. They need support, and they need to know it wasn't their fault. We talk about this all the time with domestic violence. There isn't anything you can do that makes it okay for your intimate partner to hurt you. There isn't anything you can do that violence is a natural consequence for in an intimate relationship. And so that was a philosophy that really struck for me in a way that made me turn my head a couple of times and think about it. And so for me it was about connecting with other volunteers, other individuals that moved me forward. So.
And Missy, and unfortunately it looks like we're running out of time.
Okay.
And I kind of figured this would happen. I knew we could probably fill this into an hour, but maybe quickly what got you involved, but then also another wrap up about the Super Bowl
Sure.
as we're pushing towards that.
When I went back to school a couple of years ago as a non-traditional student, I had graduated in May and I was looking for a job, but the catalyst behind going back to school is I wanted to get a job where I would do good somewhere in the community. And when the development director position at DVIP opened, one of my friends alerted me to that. And I am from Iowa City, was very familiar with their services and what they did on a very broad level, and so I was very excited to be a part of that.
Wonderful. How about another last plug for the...
Sure. So February 19th on Thursday from 5:30 to 7:30 at the Clarion Hotel in Iowa City, we'll have our 18th annual DVIP Super Bowl, and we are looking forward to it and hope everyone can come out.
Kristie, really quickly, just tell us that story.
Oh, yes. We have, every year we bring women and children from the shelter to the DVIP Super Bowl. And a couple of years ago, one of the things that was just so amazing to me, we had a group of women come. They walk in and what they see is 40 tables of about 400 people. And one woman just broke down. She walked in and she just started crying. And we were like, oh my God, what's wrong? What's wrong? And what she said to us was, you know, I never ever imagined I had this kind of support in the community. It completely overwhelmed her. It completely uplifted her at the same time. And I will say that I sometimes forget how isolating the crime is and how strongly victims are forced to blame themselves based on the behaviors and the things that batterers say. And so that was a very powerful moment.
That's great. Well, thank you, Kristie and Missy. I'll see you soon.
Yes.
Thank you both so much for what you do, and it's great to learn more and more every time that we interact. But thank you so much for coming on and sharing some of this. And again, my name is Brian McConnell, your host of Live and Local, and thanks for tuning in to PATV Channel 18, your neighborhood network. And be sure to tune in every Wednesday at 8 o'clock for the latest episode of Live and Local.